As soon as I walked in, my sister Karen spoke, cutting me off before the lawyer could even start. She'll get nothing. Dad hated her. No hello, no eye contact. Just those harsh words loud enough for everyone to hear, like she wanted them to hang in the air. The sentence hit me like a punch to the chest. I tightened my grip on my son Eli's hand. His small fingers curled around mine, warm and trembling. I forced a shaky smile at him, but he knew exactly what I was feeling. He always did. I hadn't even sat down yet, but the message was clear. I wasn't welcome here. I wasn't part of the family. I was just an unwanted detail they were ready to get rid of. Karen sat at the head of the table, poised and confident in a gray pantsuit. Her dark hair pulled tightly into a bun she always wore when she wanted to feel in control. Her red lipstick was as sharp as ever. Her battle gear for a fight I didn't know I had walked into. Then came the voice I feared even more. My Uncle Rick, Dad's older brother. He chuckled dryly, leaned back in his chair and laced his fingers behind his head, a smug smirk spreading across his face like oil. Even her kid knows she's worthless, Rick muttered, nodding toward Eli as if he wasn't even a person. Eli dropped his gaze to the floor. My heart cracked a little more. Around the room, a few people nodded. My cousins, old neighbors, family friends I hadn't seen in years. Everyone who had already chosen a side, and I wasn't on theirs. I swallowed hard, my throat dry and scratchy. The air was thick with the smell of dust, worn leather chairs, and whatever heavy perfume Karen had drenched herself in. I could feel my pulse pounding in my ears, loud, hot, and humiliating. I guided Eli to the furthest chair at the end of the long, dark wood table, away from the group. The chair groaned under me as I sat. Eli climbed up beside me, his little legs dangling. His hands folded tightly in his lap like he was trying to vanish. Karen slowly turned her head toward me. And when our eyes met, she smiled. But it wasn't a kind smile, just one full of pity and venom. "You know this is pointless, right?" Karen said, her voice cold and smooth. "Dad rewrote the will, cut you out completely. He said you were dead to him." I didn't reply. I couldn't. My tongue felt heavy and useless in my mouth. I just nodded slightly, pretending to understand. But deep down, I kept asking myself, why did I even come? I had hoped, just hoped, that there'd be something. A note, a message, some sign that he remembered me. Something to make it all make sense. But here I was again. Back in the one place I swore I'd never return to. Surrounded by people who had already decided I was gone long before he was. Just as I was about to get up and leave before they started tearing into the estate like vultures, the door creaked open. "Mr. Connor." My father's lawyer stepped in, holding a thick folder. He looked exactly the same. Neatly dressed, eyes tired, his face unreadable. The room fell silent. Everyone sat up straighter. This was it. I braced myself for whatever humiliation was coming. I had expected nothing, and I was sure I'd leave with the same. But what no one in that room knew, not Karen, not Rick, not even me, was that my son Eli had brought something with him. And with one sentence, he was about to unravel everything they thought they knew. "You forgot the video he recorded." It had been 8 years since I'd stepped into a room like this with my family. 8 years since I packed up my life, one they said I didn't deserve. Took Eli, just 2 at the time, and left without looking back. Not because I wanted to, but because I had no choice. Every conversation with my father, Charles, ended either in silence or shouting. Every family gathering felt like walking barefoot on glass while forcing a smile. But now, here I was, back in a room that still reeked of cigar smoke and old resentment. The irony. I hadn't even known I was invited to the will reading. The envelope arrived 3 days after the funeral. No note, just the date, time, and address written in Connor's neat, formal script. For a moment, I wondered if it was a mistake. Maybe they meant to send it to Ken. Or maybe it was just one last cruel joke. But Eli wanted to go. He looked at me with those soft, wide eyes, his voice quiet but sure. "We should go, Mom," he said. "Maybe there's something you need to hear." I don't know how a 10-year-old can have that kind of wisdom, but Eli does. Sometimes I think he sees the world in ways most adults never do. So we came. I wore the plain black dress I hadn't touched since my mother's funeral. And he wore a little button-up that he picked out himself. That morning, I braided his hair with shaky hands, and he told me I looked beautiful. He didn't know I had barely slept, or that I was terrified to face the people who'd treated me like I didn't exist for nearly a decade. I knew what they thought of me. Karen, the perfect daughter. She stayed. She helped. She took care of Dad. And she made sure everyone knew it. She told the story so many times it became the truth. Julia abandoned the family. Julia couldn't handle life. Julia ran away. They never asked why I left. They didn't care to know. Or maybe they just didn't want to. Dad stopped speaking to me when I chose to leave a marriage that was tearing me apart. When I showed up on his porch with Eli in a suitcase, he just shut the door without saying a word. The one person who was supposed to protect me had become another barrier I had to break through. Uncle Rick didn't help. He was just Dad's echo, always repeating bitter lines. Family doesn't quit. Blood is loyalty. Don't come back crying. And Karen, she soaked it all up and turned it into a script she could use against me. So, I stopped trying. I built a quiet life for Eli and me. We didn't have much, but we had peace, love, and laughter. Still, a small part of me held on to the faint hope that maybe, in the end, Dad had seen something, regretted something, or left something behind. Maybe that's why I opened the envelope, why I showed up. But now, sitting in that room surrounded by cold stares and smug grins, I felt foolish for ever hoping. Eli hadn't said a word since we sat down. He sat upright, his hands in his lap, eyes scanning the room as if he was studying every face. His calmness unsettled me a little, like he was waiting for something to happen. Then, Mr. Connor cleared his throat and opened the folder. I leaned back in my chair and whispered to myself, "Just get through this. Don't let them see you break." But Eli? He was sitting with something bigger than grief, and before this was over, he'd prove he was the only one in the room truly paying attention to what my father had to say. Mr. Connor cleared his throat again. The kind of sound lawyers make when they want everyone's attention without asking for it. He adjusted his glasses, flipped open the folder, and began reading the will as if it were just another routine task. I barely heard the first few lines. Standard legal jargon, estate terms, executive declarations. My mind wasn't on what he was saying, but on what I knew was coming. He wouldn't say my name. I was certain of it. But each time he paused to turn a page, I held my breath, hoping that maybe, just maybe, the next words would be different. Maybe he'd surprise me. But no. It was all the usual names. To my daughter Karen, I leave the primary residence and all its contents. Karen's face didn't change, but I could feel her satisfaction hanging in the air like perfume drifting across the table. She glanced at her husband Neil, who gave her a smug little nod, like they were already planning how to redecorate. To my brother Rick, the lake property and all remaining shares in the family business. Rick leaned back even further in his chair, arms crossed, chin lifted, like a king surveying his new domain. I watched him slide his cigar back between his teeth, gently biting down as if he'd already won something. Then to Paul, my nephew. The vintage car collection. Paul, the cousin who once locked me out of my own room when I was 9 just to watch me cry. That Paul. I bit the inside of my cheek to stop my face from cracking. I could feel the tears building up behind my eyes, sharp and hot, but I didn't let them fall. Still, not a word for me. Not even a mention. Then came the line I'd been dreading. And as previously stated, my daughter Julia will not receive a portion of this estate. There it was. Simple. Final. Like a door slamming shut. It hit me like a punch to the chest. Eli's small fingers slipped into mine under the table. I hadn't even realized my hands were clenched in my lap. His touch pulled me back, grounding me before I could lose myself. My heartbeat thudded in my ears and my skin felt on fire. And then the whisper started, low but deliberate. Karen let out a soft scoff. Told you, she muttered to Neil. Uncle Rick shook his head, as if it were all so predictable. Takes a certain kind of person to walk away from her own father, he said, his voice louder than necessary. The others, the cousins, the so-called family friends, didn't say much, but their silence spoke volumes. I focused on the wood grain of the table, the twisting and spiraling lines, almost hypnotic. It was easier to look at that than at their faces. Inside my head, I could hear my own voice, flat and empty. Why did I come? Why did I think he'd remember me? But then Eli shifted. He let go of my hand and sat up straighter. I felt the change before I saw it. His voice broke through the tension like a quiet blade, soft but firm. You forgot the video he recorded. The room went still. Karen blinked. Rick turned to Mr. Connor, who stopped, the pen hovering over the page. I looked at Eli, confusion flooding my mind. What video? I barely whispered. But Eli wasn't looking at me. He was staring ahead, still certain. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small white envelope, slightly folded but tightly sealed. My name was on the front, but underneath, in his father's handwriting, it read, "For attorney only if it gets ugly." I hadn't fully grasped what was happening yet. But Eli did. And suddenly, for the first time all day, I felt the balance in the room shift. I stared at the envelope in Eli's hands like it was something toxic. He held it so calmly, like it wasn't the most dangerous thing in the room. But my eyes were locked on the handwriting. All caps, unmistakably my father's, for attorney only if it gets ugly. Gets ugly? Well, it certainly had. I barely managed to ask, my voice trembling, Eli, where did you get this? He looked at me, his face soft but steady. Grandpa gave it to me a while ago. He told me to keep it safe. My heart skipped. He gave it to you? He nodded. That day we went to visit him. It was just me and Grandpa. You were at work. I blinked hard, trying to bring the memory into focus. I remembered that day. Eli had asked if he could go with our neighbor to drop something off at Dad's. It was the first time I'd let him go without me. I had no idea they even spoke. Now Mr. Connor reached across the table. May I? He asked softly. Eli handed over the envelope without hesitation. The entire room leaned in. Karen squinted, like she couldn't make sense of what was happening. Rick shifted in his seat, no longer slouched. For once, no one had anything to say. The envelope made a soft, tearing sound as Connor opened it. Inside was a small, black USB drive, ordinary, but my pulse raced like it was a grenade. Connor frowned and pulled out a note too. Another page in my father's handwriting. He scanned it, and for the first time since entering the room, his calm demeanor cracked just slightly. But I saw it. He didn't speak immediately. He just nodded slowly, as if something unspoken had been confirmed. Everyone. Connor said, his voice quieter now. There's a video message from Charles Thomas, recorded before the final version of this will. It was sealed with instructions to be played only if the situation became contentious. Connor's eyes shifted to Karen, then to Rick. Both of them squirmed in their seats. Karen scoffed. This is ridiculous. He never mentioned anything about a video. Uncle Rick leaned forward, his tone sharp. We don't even know what's on that thing. It could be fake. Connor raised a hand. It's timestamp authenticated. I recognize the handwriting and signature, and according to his instructions, I'm legally required to play it. He plugged the USB into a sleek black laptop sitting beside him. The screen lit up, the logo fading into a black frame with a single word. Play. The atmosphere in the room shifted. No one spoke. No one moved. I could feel my heartbeat in my fingertips. I gripped the arms of my chair as if they might stop me from floating away into some other reality. My breath was shallow and unsteady. Why would Dad leave a video? Why did Eli have it? What could he possibly want to say now, after everything? Eli didn't seem nervous. He sat still, eyes locked on the screen, like he already knew what was coming. Karen looked pale now, her lips pressed tight. Rick had stopped chewing his cigar. I wanted to run. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream, but above all, I wanted to know. Connor pressed the space bar. The screen went black for a split second, then flickered. And there he was, my father, older and thinner, sitting at his desk. He was wearing the navy sweater I bought him for his last birthday, the one I didn't even know he'd worn. His hands were folded, his expression wasn't cold, just tired. He looked straight into the camera and then he began to speak. I couldn't breathe. Not when the screen lit up. Not when I saw his face. Not when the first two words left his mouth. Hi, Julia. He looked older than I remembered. His skin was thinner. His once proud posture had softened. But it was still my father, Charles Thomas, sitting at that old oak desk with the antique globe behind him, just like when we were kids. But this time, his expression wasn't stern or distant. It was human. If you're watching this, he said, I'm gone. And I'm guessing things didn't go well at the reading. His hands were clasped in front of him, fingers twitching slightly. A small, nervous habit I shared. I didn't expect peace between you and the family. I know what they think of you. Hell, I know what I said about you. He looked down, swallowed, and I realized I had been wrong. My breath caught in my throat and my nails dug into the armrest of my chair. Eli looked up at me, but I couldn't tear my eyes away from the screen. I believed what Karen told me. I believed Rick. I believed you left because you didn't care. I didn't ask questions. I didn't listen to you, not once. You tried and I shut the door on you and on Eli. I heard Karen shift in her chair, sharply, uncomfortably. But I couldn't look at her. I just couldn't. Dad's voice cracked, just barely. I thought being strong meant being proud, that if you walked away it was betrayal. But strength is showing up. It's protecting your child and you did that. You did what I couldn't. His eyes glistened. My vision blurred, tears threatening to spill. I met Eli one day when he stopped by, just the two of us. That kid. He didn't say much, but when I asked him about you, he just said, my mom is the safest place in the world. I gasped and quickly pressed my hand to my mouth. I lost you, Julia. I see that now. I lost my daughter because I couldn't stop being right long enough to love you the way you needed. But I won't let my last act be pushing you away again. He cleared his throat and looked directly into the camera, steady now. So I changed the will. A collective gasp filled the room. I heard a chair creak. Probably Rick's. Karen muttered something under her breath, but I couldn't make it out. I could barely hear anything besides my father's voice. I've left the house to you and Eli. The savings, the retirement fund, it's all yours. And I've set up a college trust for Eli. I know this doesn't fix what I broke, but I want you to have the peace I couldn't give you when I was alive. He paused, leaning slightly closer to the camera. And if they're angry, let them be angry. You earned this. You went through everything and never stopped being a mother. That's more than I ever managed. A lump formed in my throat, so big it felt like I could barely breathe. I'm proud of you and I love you, Julia. I always did. I just didn't know how to show it. Then, just before the video faded to black, he added softly, "Take care of my grandson. Tell him thank you." The screen went dark. No music, no transition. Just complete silence. Chairs creaked, and I heard someone sniffle, but I didn't move. I stayed there, hand over my mouth, tears running down my cheeks, feeling like something I didn't even know I was carrying had finally been released. After all the years of noise, blame, exile, and silence, he heard me. He finally heard me. And in that quiet moment, no one could take that away. When the screen went black, no one said a word. Not Karen. Not Rick. Not the cousins or family friends who had once smiled politely while ignoring the burden I carried. Even Mr. Connor sat frozen, his hand hovering above the mouse, as if pausing the video had also paused time. And maybe, in a way, it had. I don't know how long I sat there. My hand was still over my mouth, my cheeks wet with tears. But I didn't notice them until I felt Eli's hand slip into mine again. He wasn't crying. He just looked up at me with a small, knowing smile, like he'd been waiting all along for the truth to finally be spoken. I bent down and kissed the top of his head. My heart ached with something too big to put into words: love, relief, grief, together, all at once. Across the room, Karen suddenly stood up. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. With shaky hands, she grabbed her bag and walked out without saying a word. Her husband followed behind, his face red, mumbling something under his breath. Rick stayed seated for a moment longer, his jaw tight and eyes unfocused. When he finally stood, he looked at Connor like he might argue, but even he knew there was no point. My father had spoken. His truth couldn't be ignored anymore. One by one, the others left. Some couldn't look me in the eye. A few nodded quietly. Whether out of pity or respect, I couldn't tell. Soon, it was just the three of us left. Connor gently closed the folder and cleared his throat. "There will be some paperwork," he said, his voice softer now. "But everything's in order." I nodded. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? He gave a small, genuine smile and left us alone in the room. The silence that followed wasn't the same one I had grown used to. This silence felt different. Peaceful. Complete. Like something had finally fallen into place. I looked at Eli, still holding my hand. Still looking at me like I was the strongest person in the world. Maybe, in his eyes, I was. But in truth, he was the one who saved me. Carrying that envelope like it was just a piece of paper. Not the truth that would change everything. We stayed a little longer. I'm not sure why. Maybe I just needed a moment to breathe. Maybe I wanted to linger in the one place where for the first time in years, I felt like I actually belonged. Dad's voice echoed in my mind. "I'm proud of you." 3 words I'd never thought I'd hear. 3 words I needed more than I ever admitted. I thought about everything I'd carried. The silence, the blame, the feeling of being erased. And now, I wasn't erased. I was seen. I was heard. I was remembered. I looked at Eli again. Thank you, I whispered. He tilted his head. For what? For being braver than me, I said. For holding on to something that mattered. He smiled. I just wanted you to hear him. And I had. Not just through the video, but in the shift that happened afterward. In the peace that filled the room once everyone else had left. That's the thing about the truth. It doesn't always show up when you expect it, but when it does, it changes everything. So no, I didn't leave that room feeling broken. I left holding my son's hand, with my father's words still resonating in my heart. I left feeling whole. And that silence. It finally meant something. If this story spoke to you, if you've ever been pushed aside, misunderstood, or made to feel like your voice didn't matter, just remember. You are not invisible. Sometimes the truth takes time, but it will always come to light. If you felt something while listening, please like this video and share it with someone who might need to hear it too. Stories like this only reach the people who need them when you help spread the word. And if you want more real, raw, and emotional stories like this, don't forget to subscribe. There's so much more to share. Until next time, stay strong, stay kind, and remember, your voice matters.